Welcome to both my garden and my kitchen. I'm going to show you how I process and can tomatoes from start to finish, and I thank Juan for shooting this video all on his iPhone. It looks absolutely beautiful, just like my tomatoes. Hey, that's about 20 pounds. Wash them. This is really a long, all-day process for me. There's a lot of prep work, so when I do this, I make sure I have nothing else on my plate for the day. I used to slice the bottom of the tomatoes and then dip them in boiling water to remove the skins, but then I bought a food mill, and with it removing the skins and seeds, it cut down my prep time significantly. I do remove the stem end of the tomato. I just think it's unnecessary to put that through the food mill. And I use any kind of tomato for my sauces. Heirloom, paste, slicers, whatever. You just chop them up, you turn that handle, and you watch the juice come out. Even though the food mill takes away a lot of the work for me, there's a lot of tomatoes, there's a lot of chopping, and I have two very large stock pots that I cook the tomato pulp in. So by the time I'm finished chopping, cutting, and putting through the food mill, I'll have about 16 liters of tomato pulp between the two pots that I need to cook down before I even get to the canning process. Now that I've got the tomato pulp on the stove and it can cook down, the next step is the one that nobody ever talks about, which is the cleanup afterwards. You have to clean your entire food mill, and the metal strainer that comes with it is a real pain to clean. You're going to splatter things everywhere. You got to take the seeds, and all the stuff that you don't use is got to go somewhere. And I know they say, don't put tomato seeds in your compost bin, don't put tomato seeds in your compost bin. So yeah, I put tomato seeds in my compost bin, and this is what I get from it. While the sauce is still cooking down, this is when I take a little bit of a break. I crochet, so I plant my butt in the couch, and that's what I do. The sauce is almost cooked now, so what we do, we need to prep our canner. So my pressure canner requires 3 liters of water. And there's a splash of vinegar in there to help with like discoloring of the jars. You need to use a ladle. Well, I use a ladle, a jar picker-upper thingy, a wooden spoon, that's to get air bubbles out, lemon juice for acidity, and a funnel so you don't make a big friggin' mess. Put the canner on the element and turn it on high so it starts to boil. And since you need to have hot jars, you take your already cleaned jars, you fill them with some hot water, and you place them in the canner while the water is getting ready to boil, and that way they stay hot until you're ready to fill them with sauce. While you're making sure that your jars are heated before you start your canning process, your lids and your rings for your jars also need to be kept warm. Put them in a pan of hot water until needed. And no, you don't need to sterilize anything. Current canning guidelines, whether you're doing a water bath or pressure canning like I'm doing, as long as your processing period is over 10 minutes, sterilization of your jars and lids are not necessary. Take out a jar. It's going to be hot. Whether you water bath or pressure can, you need to maintain the acidity levels of tomatoes when you're processing them. So for a half pint jar, it's 1 tablespoon of bottled lemon juice, For the full pint jar like I'm using, it's 2 tablespoons. And yes, the lemon juice needs to be bottled. The pH levels in bottled lemon juice are consistent, whereas fresh lemon juice, it's not. Using a funnel and a ladle, you're going to put your prepared tomato pulp in your jars. You need something long, fairly thin, and non-metallic, like a wooden spoon. And you're going to use the handle of it, and you're going to run it around the inside of the jar to remove any excess air bubbles. Then you need to leave a 1/2 inch of headspace, which is the unfilled space from the top of the jar. Top it up if necessary to get to that 1/2 inch. You wipe down the rim and the outside, and I even wipe a little bit of the inside of the rim too of the jars. Grab a ring and a lid. Tighten it to finger tight. And place the jar back in the canner. Then you repeat the entire process until your jars and canner is full. In there. Just this heat. And that's what we do. Now, we have all jars in the pot. Lower the heat just a bit to maintain a rolling boil. Put your lid. Line up your V's. And then you close it. If there's anything left over, freeze it or make dinner with it. So now that it's venting, you set a timer for 10 minutes. After 10 minutes, we'll put this guy on. He's called a pressure regulator. Next time I'll read the manual. So, now that it's vented, we put our pressure, whatever you want to call this, on it. I'll look it up later. We need 10 pounds of pressure. So we remove the top disc, put it on top. That little silver button at the back is called an air vent cover lock, and when it's in the up position, there's pressure in the canner. Rough gently like that. And set your timer for 15 minutes. 15 minutes is up. Let's off the stove. And you let that sit till it depressurizes. You can't rush the depressurizing part. When it's done, it's done. But if you are in the same room or nearby, you will hear the air vent drop down and close. So we remove that, and we let it cool for 10 more minutes, and then we can open it up and take them out. 10 minutes. Take the jars out of the canner, place them on a towel on the counter with some airspace around them, let them cool off overnight, minimum 12 hours, and you check on them the next day. But there is one sound that you want to hear that is music to every canner's ears. I know, a lot of work for 7 jars, right? Next day, you Wipe your lids. Don't forget to check your seals. Little bit jar on the tube. Putting the lids on is up to you. Label and date your jars. And if you have time, you can also make some canned peaches and pears too. And the last thing you do is store them with the rest of your canned goodies. Thanks for hanging out with me during this whole process. It's tiring, but it's fun, and it's very, very tasty.